Hey, we're doing everyone, welcome back. So today we're going to be taking a look at 4 motorcycles, maybe 5 or 6, that I would have if I am totally broke. If I had to have a motorcycle and I had to have it on the cheapest possible budget, which ones would I have? And we're going to be mostly going for bikes that are reliable, bikes that you shouldn't have to do a lot of work on, bikes that are fairly cheap to maintain as well. So there's not going to be a lot of flashy kind of sport bikes in this, but there might be a couple of surprises in there for you if you are looking for a motorcycle on a super tight budget. And I'm talking, in some cases, less than £1,500, maybe even a bit less than that, depending on where you're shopping. So we're going to divide this video up into 4 separate categories. So we're going to have an A1 category, which is our 125cc category. Then we're going to have an A2, so that is up to 400cc, or some bikes now are up to 500cc, but motorcycles that are restricted up to 45 horsepower. Then we're going to have a middleweight category, so anywhere from 600 to, 800cc or so. And then finally, heavyweight, and that's where we're going to be looking at the 1000s and up. All right, so let's start off with the smallest displacement that we've got today. And there are, to be fair, quite a few options out there. But from what I've seen right now on the market, the best 125cc motorcycle that you can buy on a budget is the Honda CBF 125. Now, this is a motorcycle that is really simple to maintain. You can, and because everything is accessible as well, you can maintain this bike all by yourself. You can learn so much by having a motorcycle like this and working on it on your own, honestly. And they hardly break. These are some of the most reliable 125cc motorcycles that you can buy. And right now you're looking at pretty much $1,000, maybe even a little bit less than that. Cat C, I mean, what is Cat C these days? I can't remember. What is that? Cat C, this vehicle was written off as Cat C. Okay, so some of these bikes, I don't know, you'll have to check them out. 125s are notoriously difficult to buy, but to be fair, a lot of them would have been dropped already, and because 125s kind of lose their value quite a lot, or some of them do at least anyway, honestly, if it's like a Cat D or something like that, if it's a category that where someone has decided to repair it themselves, then it could be a nice tidy little buy. I mean, you've got this one here as well, a Honda CG 125, never heard of it. But yeah, these Honda 125cc bikes are honestly some of the best you can find at the moment, and they're all £1,500 or less at the moment. I mean, you can get one that is pretty much good to go for £1,500. You get some here that are overpriced. Cat N, it's overpriced for me. Okay, so this vehicle was damaged in the past, but the structural frame or chassis was not affected. The insurer decided that repairing the vehicle would have cost more than replacing it. But it does mean that someone has repaired this motorcycle. I imagine it has an MOT as well. Yeah, MOT expires in September. So, yeah, you can get a Honda CBF 125 any day of the week for about £1,500. You could even look a little bit cheaper than that, but of course you're going to be looking a little bit older. I mean, there are some, here's one here that is £700, but I don't know what the situation is with this one. Used for 2 years, regularly maintained by my dad, comes with 2 sets of keys, and a set of keys for the back box. Yeah. There you go. Here's a perfectly good bike, 700 quid, 2016. I think you're looking pretty good with one of these motorcycles. If you are looking at a 125cc bike that you're looking for reliability as well as a little bit of fun, you can't go wrong with one of these. Now, I do want to add in some honorable mentions with each of these categories, because the next bike that you could look at, which again is a pretty good choice, is the Yamaha YBR 125. Now, this one here is from 2007 to 2009. It's the same era as this CBF 125 that we were looking at before. The biggest difference between these two bikes is the Honda produces a little bit more horsepower. All right, neither of these two bikes are going to produce peak horsepower. I think the limit is 14 horsepower on a 125, so neither of these are going to be hitting that limit. But it doesn't really matter. This bike is producing 10 horsepower, and the CBR is, the CBF rather, is producing 11 horsepower and 11 newton meters of torque. Yeah, so Power isn't really something that you have to worry about, in my opinion, when you're looking at motorcycles like these. But this is, again, another really good choice. So let's change this to Yamaha. Here we go, a Yamaha YBR 125. Again, 22k miles, less than £1,000. Yep, totally good, and MOT'd as well until August, it looks like. Less than £1,000. So these motorcycles right here, again, are another really good choice. And if you had to toss a coin between the two, honestly, it doesn't really matter. They're both absolutely fantastic. They're both really reliable. And they're both going to be fun as well. Here you go. Here's a good one. MOT as well. Yeah, everything is good with this one. 5,000 miles for a 125. Wow. 1,400 quid. You can't go wrong with any of these bikes either. All right. So either CBF 125 or the YBR 125 from Yamaha, honestly, are going to be good buys either way. All right, so the next category that we're going to be looking at is A2. And for me personally, I've had a little look around, and it looks like, unfortunately, the A2 bikes are up in value a little bit right now anyway. But for me, the best choice that I found, if you're looking at a motorcycle today, is probably going to be something like this. Kawasaki Ninja 300. Now, this one's from 2014, 15,000 miles. It's $2,500. You're actually going to find that a lot of these motorcycles in the A2 category, in the A2 class, are going to be around about $3,000, $2,500, $3,000, something like that. But to be fair, 40 horsepower, this thing is pretty much on par with a Ninja 400. You're not going to see that much difference in terms of performance. And if anything, this motorcycle is probably a little bit lighter than the Ninja 400, or now the Ninja 500 that Kawasaki have released. I'm not sure why they had to do that, but I suppose it looks nicer. But anyway, we won't go there. But honestly, fantastic motorcycle. And again, it's going to be quite easy to maintain, or it should be quite easy to maintain. You shouldn't need to do a lot to the bike to keep it going. Just as regular oil changes should be good enough for this bike for a long time. 15,000 miles is absolutely nothing. $2,500 for me. A motorcycle like this is an absolute steal. Yeah, it's a nice looking bike as well, to be fair. So you're getting 39 horsepower, 1,100 RPM. That's awesome. Or excuse me, 11,000 RPM, and 27 Newton meters of torque. That's really nice, and it's going to be a huge jump over your 125, even if you started riding on like an R125 from Yamaha, or a Ninja 125, or a CBR 125R. This is going to be such a huge difference, and arguably not too different to the likes of the Ninja 400 or what have you, as I mentioned earlier. So again, we've got another honorable mention here, and that is the KTM 390 Duke. They're going around about the same price, and you could also look at an RC 390 as well if you're so inclined, but the 390 Duke is probably going to be a little bit cheaper on insurance. Performance is, it's okay, 44 horsepower, but it is from a single cylinder, I believe. Let's double check that. All right, now this is the 2024 model, but they pretty much haven't changed. So you are getting 100cc more of displacement, but yeah, it is a single cylinder. So that 45 horsepower might seem like a lot, but that isn't actually the main attraction to this bike. It's actually that torque. 39 Newton meters of torque is going to feel so nice. It's going to feel so good. But again, the benefits of this motorcycle are everything is open, so maintaining it should be fairly straightforward again, because you haven't got to take off loads of fairing. And it should be a fairly reliable bike. I mean, some of these that we've been looking at, let's have a look here. These are 2013, there's one here in 2017 as well. Some of them have got some pretty high mileage, but you are going to be looking at about $2,500 again. I have looked at other brands. I have looked at Suzuki, I've looked at Yamaha, looked at Honda, and unfortunately, their offerings are more expensive than the Duke or the Ninja 300. But for me, I like sport bikes. I like nakeds as well, but I prefer to have two cylinders as opposed to a single cylinder. And as much as the 390 Duke is going to be a really fun bike to ride, I still think, for me, the Ninja 300 takes the cake with this one. They're going to be very similar ages, and you're going to get, I think you're going to get a little bit more reliability out of a Ninja 300 than you would out of the 390 Duke. But honestly, they should be both pretty good. But that, for me, is my pick for the A2 category. Alright, so now we're going to be moving on to the middleweight category. This is when bikes get really serious and a little bit cheaper as well, funnily enough. So for this category, I think I've got to give it to the Yamaha FZ600. These bikes, you can get them all day long at £1,500. A little bit more expensive if you wanted like an old, this is a Thundercat, or if you wanted an old R6 as well, you could pay a little bit more. But yeah, these FZ600s are everywhere. And really good bikes, honestly. Really nice amount of power, near enough 100 horsepower, a lovely amount of torque as well. And again, these bikes, they just go on and on and on. I've seen these bikes for sale, still running, still perfectly fine, with an MOT and everything, with over 80,000 miles. These bikes are absolutely fantastic, and I think they're fairly similar to an R6 engine. They're not producing as much horsepower, but I think the engine design is fairly similar. It's still a 599cc engine, so I imagine it's very similar to the R6's engine, but it's going to have more torque. It's going to be more reliable than an R6 because it probably won't redline anywhere near as high, but you're still going to get an absolutely fantastic experience out of this motorcycle, and it comes with a neat little center stand as well, so it just makes things like maintenance a little bit easier. If you're taking off the rear wheel, well, yeah, having that center stand is really helpful, or doing oil changes or anything like that. It's just a really neat little feature to have. But yeah, these kinds of bikes, honestly, they're really good. And don't be put off by the age of them either. I know the bikes we've been looking at have been kind of early 2010s, but honestly, these bikes, they last a hell of a long time, and really fun bikes to ride, and they're reliable. So, in terms of honorable mentions here for this class, let's see what we've got. The Honda CB600F Hornet. Now, this is actually a motorcycle that I was looking to buy for our £1,500 Superbike motorcycle challenge. And I was looking at one with these kind of under-seat exhausts, and they seem to be going a little bit cheaper this time last year, but nowadays they're going for around about $2,000 for a similar age to the FZ600. So again, still going to be a really reliable bike. A lot of these, look at the mileage, loads of mileage, and they've still got plenty of life left in them as long as you do the recommended maintenance, just oil changes every 6 months to a year. Oil changes you can do yourself on a bike like this. You haven't got to take off any fairing. Really easy, but of course you are missing out on that kickstand. Let's have a look here in terms of performance of one of these motorcycles. See, I love the design of this bike, but yeah, you're looking at very similar horsepower. A little bit more than the FZ600. Torque-wise, that's going to be on par as well. But honestly, they're both going to be absolutely fantastic bikes. But for me, because the FZ6 just is a little bit cheaper, it hasn't quite held its value as well as the CBF 600 Hornet. This is just, yeah, you can't go wrong with a bike like this, trust me. Just make sure, like always, that it's got decent service history. Make sure you know when it was last serviced, last had its oil changed, last had its brake fluid done, last had the coolant as well if you want to. Just check out all those things and you should be absolutely fine. But this for me is definitely my top pick of the middleweight category. All right, so now we are heading into the big boys, the big leagues. So this was quite a difficult choice because at this size of motorcycle, there are loads of options out there. You've got a Suzuki Bandit. You've got, we're looking at 1000s and up or 900s and up. There's so many choices at really, really good budgets, good value for money. But for me, I don't think it's going to come to any surprises here, but it had to be the ZX9R from Kawasaki. Honestly, my experience of my ZX9R has been so positive, and they're even better in terms of value now than they used to be when I bought mine. I paid around about a similar price to mine as this one, and this is from a dealership as well. But just honestly, a solid bike all round. Performance wise, you're looking at top level performance, 150 horsepower, over 100 newton meters of torque, top speed like 175 mile an hour flat out. Quarter mile is like just over 10 seconds. It's absolutely ridiculous. So for a sporty motorcycle that, again, is going to be really straightforward to maintain, doing those basic doing that basic maintenance will keep this bike running for an awful long time. Now, this one has got quite a lot of miles compared to mine. I say that, I mean, it's only 6,000-7,000 miles more than what I've got, and I'm sure it runs like a clock. Seriously, just absolutely brilliant. What a motorcycle. But of course, if you're going to do some maintenance on this bike, you've got to take off some fairings, or if you're having to change out the clutch like I did, we've got a video about that, how to change the clutch out on this motorcycle. It's actually really straightforward. It's not a difficult process at all. It might look really scary, but honestly, no worries whatsoever. But just a brilliant all-round motorcycle. It's comfortable as well. Even though it's sporty, it's really comfortable to ride. You're not leaning over quite so aggressively as a lot of the modern sport bikes. Yeah, just what a machine, man. Absolutely fantastic. And this one as well, I'm a bit of a sucker for the Kawasaki green, so for me, this would have been the color scheme that I would have wanted for my ZX9R, but just absolutely brilliant. So in terms of honorable mentions here, there's quite a few. I mentioned the Bandit, Suzuki Bandit, but there's also the Yamaha TDM 900. I've seen quite a few of these going for less than $2,000, but the ones that I've seen here, they've got quite a lot of miles on them, and they don't perform. The performance isn't anywhere near as good as on the ZX9. But to be fair, if you're looking for something that is a bit more touring oriented, something that's more comfortable, but still has a load of horsepower and a load of torque, well, something like this is going to be pretty good as well. But just remember that Yamaha FZ600 was producing more horsepower than this bike, even though it's got 300cc of displacement more. So if you're going to get this, you might as well get an FZ600 almost, especially if it's got significantly less mileage anyway than some of these bikes do. But honestly, see, look at how the prices are going up. So yeah, an FZS 1000. This is one of those bikes that you could look at as well. That's a pretty neat little bike, but you're paying $3,000 for it. So that was one of the options that I had. But let's have a little look here what KTM have to offer, because I think 990 Duke. You could look at something like this. This is quite a good bike as well, but again, you're paying through the nose for it. $4,000 for one of these things. Yeah, it's a little bit newer than the ZX9R, but I'd bet the ZX9 is more reliable than this anyway. Of course, I mean, the easiest thing is about this motorcycle, the better thing is about this bike is you haven't got to remove any fairing to access anything to maintain it. So oil changes and that, it's fairly straightforward on something like this. Let's have a little look here at Honda. Again, you're looking at pan-Europeans, and this isn't one of those bikes that I would buy myself personally. I would have a go on a Super Blackbird personally. That is a really good bike as well. You're looking at more performance than the ZX9. You're looking at, again, quite a comfy experience as well, because it's kind of in that sport touring category, but more sporty. So it should be fairly similar in terms of ergonomics. Excuse me, can't get my words out today. But you are going to be looking at something that's even older, that's got more mileage, and it might not have an MOT. Whereas those ZX9Rs, you can get them with MOTs all day long with less mileage. So again, it's a toss-up between what you like. We can have a look at Suzuki as well, but again, you're looking at a little bit more money for Suzukis these days. They seem to have held their value quite a lot. Here you go, look, here's a Bandit 1200, 2005. That's a really good bike, and I have seen these Bandits go for really cheap as well, £1,500 or less. It really does depend on where you shop. We're looking today on Auto Trader, but of course you can look at places like Gumtree or Craigslist if you're in the United States or Canada. You could have a look on Facebook Marketplace, did I mention that already? Or maybe even eBay, something like that. But these are bikes you can buy right now with MOTs ready to rock. All right, this isn't a video where it's about the bikes you can buy that you've got to tinker with before they're ready to go. These are motorcycles that you can buy right away and ride away. That's kind of the whole point of this video. So, I mean, we'll have a look at Kawasaki again, but I mean, the ZX9s were by far the best on offer. But you could look at a ZZR 1100. I think there could be some ZZR 1200s as well. That's this similar kind of price range here. But look, two ZX9s, same year. Okay, one's got a lot more mileage, but another ZX9R Cat N, but yeah, another ZX9R. See what I mean? There's loads of them. Look, this one's got a similar amount of mileage to mine. Yeah, okay, it's a little bit more expensive, but it's not that far off, you know. There's a ZZR 1200. I have seen these go for much cheaper than this, all right? So don't be put off by that. If you're looking for something like a Blackbird, then have a look at a ZZR 1200 as well. Honestly, they're really good value for money these days. But shall we have a little look at Aprilia just for S's and shits and gigs, so to speak? RSV 1000. Yeah, they're expensive. These are expensive motorcycles. Unfortunately, they are a little bit more, but they're not that far off, though, to be fair. Just remember that maintenance on these motorcycles, it's either going to be harder or it's going to be more expensive. Parts for these bikes are probably going to be more expensive as well, so just keep that in mind. I don't rate the reliability of Italian motorcycles either. Could have a look at Ducati as well. Multistrada, that's a nice bike as well. Look at that. Yeah, 18,000 miles, not a lot whatsoever. That's a good little bike right there. I say little, but yeah, good bike. Yeah, you could look at Ducati Monster from this era, I suppose, but I really struggle with Italian motorcycles, to be fair. And even Triumphs, there are quite a lot of Triumphs out there. There's a Triumph Daytona you could look at. But Triumphs from this era, late 90s, early 2000s, they're not that great. Their specs are quite good, but their reliability is not well-renowned, unfortunately, for this era. I think a lot of these bikes were made in China, or a lot of the parts came from China. Then again, a lot of motorcycle manufacturers get their parts from China these days, don't they? So I don't know. Maybe that's skewing my point of view here. But you could have a look at a Triumph if you really wanted to. Just remember that I don't think they're going to be as reliable. But you've got bikes like the Triumph Sprint. Look at that, 34,000 miles. That is a nice bike, man. Yeah, nice little sport tourer right there. But there you have it, everyone. I mean, those are the motorcycles that if I was on the strictest budget possible, that I would buy, that would run, would ride absolutely great, they'd be reliable, and if you had to fix them, you could fix them dirt cheap. My ZX9, as a prime example, I was able to fix the clutch, and it cost me 30 quid for the springs and for new friction discs. And I did the job all myself. It took... with me filming the video, it took about 2 to 3 hours. But if you weren't filming, you could easily do that job within an hour, especially if you've got a little bit of experience of mechanical stuff anyway. It's not difficult to do. I suppose the one thing to keep in mind with these bikes, with these older bikes, are fork seals. Unfortunately, they are a necessary evil, fork seals to deal with. A lot of them have got blown fork seals, but if you see that yours has gone, or the bike that you're looking at, the fork seal has gone on one or both sides, or maybe the rear shock, whatever the case might be, then walk away. There's probably another motorcycle that is the same one that has either had its fork seals done recently or simply hasn't needed them yet. So honestly, there's a lot out there to choose from. And like I kind of mentioned, some of the other bikes that we've seen, like the CBF 600 Hornet, that might be cheaper on places like Facebook Marketplace or what have you. But just for convenience, we were looking on Auto Trader today. I know that Auto Trader is the first port of call for a lot of people here in the UK, and they're not quite so interested in buying on Gumtree or Facebook Marketplace. So I thought maybe this was the best platform for everyone. But honestly... yeah, there's a lot to choose. There's a lot you could get out there, and there's a lot of good stuff. Honestly, a lot of good stuff. We did make a video recently about the honest truth about buying old bikes, where we go through all the issues that you might run into when buying an old motorcycle. But if you're trying to get into motorcycles as cheaply as possible, there are options out there, and I try to keep the budget as low as possible. So under $2,000. But for most of these motorcycles, we've looked at actually under $1,500. Yeah, you can't go wrong. That is dirt cheap these days for a motorcycle, and insurance on all of them should be pretty cheap as well, especially on the CBF 125 and the YBR 125. Insurance on those shouldn't be expensive for younger riders. But there you have it, everyone. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. As much as there are so many bikes out there to choose from, let me know which 4 motorcycles you would pick if you were absolutely broke. If you had no money whatsoever, which 4 motorcycles would you pick in these categories? Let me know down in the comment section. But anyway, as always, leave a like. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to hit that notification bell as well so you don't miss any of this content that we produce. We release videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we do some shorts every now and then as well whenever I get the time. But definitely hit that like button, get subscribed so you don't miss any of this amazing content. And we will catch you all in the next video. Have a good one, everyone. Take care. Ride safe.